Orion Station floated like a shining wheel in the quiet of deep space. Ships from across the stars came and went, leaving trails of light as they docked. Inside, the station was never silent. Traders shouted prices, engineers argued over repairs, and the air carried the scent of too many foods and fuels mixed together. At the center of the busiest ring sat the Starlight Tavern. Its glowing sign flickered with age, but it still pulled in crowds. The tavern was always filled with noise. Alien laughter echoed against the walls, tankards clanged on metal tables, and strange instruments played songs from worlds most humans had never seen. Among the clamor worked Ren, a young human waiter. His uniform was simple, a dark shirt tucked into plain trousers, with a small apron that never seemed to stay clean. He wove between tables with practiced steps, carrying trays filled with steaming bowls or tall mugs. Ren had been working at the Starlight Tavern for almost a year, and in that time, he had learned how to dodge tail sweeps from reptilian guests, how to serve without flinching when someone twice his size slammed a fist on the table, and how to smile even when mocked for being human. Humans were still new to the galactic stage. Other species saw them as fragile, short-lived, and untested. Ren had grown used to comments whispered behind his back. Some called humans soft. Others said they were lucky to even leave their small blue world. Ren never argued. He simply worked, kept his head low, and saved his wages for the day he might see another planet. The tavern was especially loud that evening. A group of miners from the asteroid belt had won a haul, and they were drinking to their fortune. Near the back wall, merchants from two rival species haggled even while raising glasses. And then came a new arrival, one who drew every eye as soon as she stumbled in. Zero was tall, her skin tinted a faint silver under the neon lights. Her hair was a cascade of copper-red strands that shimmered when she moved. She belonged to the Karsh, a proud warrior race known for their discipline, though Zira did not look disciplined at all. She swayed as she walked, clutching a half-empty flask in one hand. Her steps were unsteady, and her voice rang out too loud as she greeted strangers she did not know. The Karsh rarely drank in public. To see one stumbling, half-drunk, was strange enough to make the crowd stare. Ren sighed softly. He could already tell this guest was going to cause trouble. Still, it was his job, so he approached her with a polite nod. "Welcome to the Starlight Tavern," he said. "Would you like a table?" Zira blinked down at him. For a moment, her sharp eyes tried to focus, then she laughed, a high, uneven sound. "A human waiter," she said with surprise. "Small, but standing straight. Interesting." Ren kept his smile, though he felt heat rise in his cheeks. He had heard worse. He gestured toward an empty table by the wall. "This way, please." Zira followed, her steps uneven. She dropped onto the seat with a loud thud, the flask in her hand clattering against the table. Ren placed a menu before her, though he doubted she would read it. "What do you wish to drink?" he asked. Zira waved the flask. "Already drinking. Strong Karsh fire blend." She leaned closer, lowering her voice as though sharing a secret. "Stronger than humans can handle." The surrounding tables chuckled. Ren simply nodded, collected empty mugs from another guest, and turned to leave. He had almost reached the counter when he heard the scrape of a chair behind him. Zira had risen again, unsteady on her feet. She wove between tables, ignoring stares, and headed straight toward Ren. Before he could step aside, she stumbled forward. Her hand shot out to catch herself, grabbing the front of his shirt. The fabric tore with a sharp rip. The tavern fell silent for a heartbeat. Then laughter burst out, echoing across the room. Several miners slapped the table, howling with amusement. A merchant pointed, shaking his head. To them, it was nothing more than a clumsy accident and the perfect chance to laugh at a human's misfortune. Ren felt his face burn with embarrassment. He clutched at his torn shirt, trying to cover himself. He wanted to shout, but he held his tongue. A waiter could not afford to anger guests, even careless ones. But Zero was no longer laughing. Her hand, still gripping the fabric, trembled. Her wide eyes were fixed on Ren's chest, where the torn shirt had revealed the skin beneath. Scars crossed his chest in pale lines, crisscrossing like an old map. They were not fresh, but deep and permanent, the kind that told of long healing. To Ren, they were only reminders of an accident in his past, a cave-in during his short time as a miner before he took this job. To Zira, they were something else entirely. Her laughter died in her throat. She stared, silent, her silver skin paling. The tavern, still noisy with amusement, seemed far away to her. Her hand fell back, releasing his shirt, and she stepped away slowly, her eyes never leaving those marks. Ren frowned, puzzled. He expected another mocking comment, another careless remark about human weakness. Instead, Zero whispered a word in her own tongue, one that made the few Karsh at nearby tables sit straighter. It was a word Ren did not know, but its effect was clear. The mood in the tavern shifted. The laughter softened into uneasy murmurs. Guests leaned closer, curious. Zero swayed again, not from drink this time, but from shock. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You carry the marks." Ren blinked, confused. "They're only scars," he said quietly. But to Zira, they were not only scars. She knew what she saw, and her drunken haze was gone in an instant. And with that moment, the tavern no longer looked at Ren as just a human waiter. Every eye followed him, wondering what those marks meant and why they mattered to a Karsh warrior girl. The night at the Starlight Tavern had changed, and Ren's life was about to change with it. The tavern that had been loud a moment ago now felt strangely heavy. The air carried tension, as if everyone inside sensed something had shifted. Ren stood in the center of it, his torn shirt clutched in one hand, his chest exposed. He wished he could disappear. He had worked hard to avoid drawing attention, but now every eye in the Starlight Tavern was fixed on him. Zira stared, her silver-tinted face pale and her copper-red hair falling forward as she leaned closer. She had forgotten the flask in her hand, forgotten her laughter, forgotten the drink that had brought her to this state. All that mattered were the scars across Ren's chest. "They are not only scars," she said at last, her voice low but clear enough for nearby tables to hear. "These are the marks of the echo." Ren frowned, confused. "I do not know what that means." "They are just from an accident." Zira shook her head slowly, as if he had spoken nonsense. Her voice grew firmer. "No accident makes this pattern. My people carved these shapes into stone thousands of years ago. They appear in our oldest records. They mean survival, defiance, and a warning." The crowd began to whisper. Some laughed quietly, thinking the girl had simply drunk too much. Others leaned forward, listening, because her tone carried a weight no one could dismiss. The few Karsh in the room stiffened. They glanced at each other, sharing silent recognition, then turned their eyes back to Ren. Ren shifted uncomfortably. He had lived with the scars since his days as a miner on Arden Colony. When the tunnels collapsed, he had been one of the few pulled out alive. The jagged rocks and falling beams had carved the lines into his body. He had never thought of them as anything more than marks of pain. To hear this alien warrior speak of them as something legendary unsettled him. "I do not know your legends," he said softly. "I only know what happened to me. A mine collapsed, and I survived." Zira's silver eyes widened. "You survived a collapse. Buried alive, and you lived." Her words carried awe. "That is what the echo marks mean. Endurance when the world falls apart. Rising again from what should have ended you." The tavern grew restless. Miners who had been laughing now frowned thoughtfully. Merchants who had dismissed humans as weak shifted in their seats. Ren could feel their stares pressing on him, and it made his stomach twist. He wanted to step away, to hide, but his legs felt rooted to the floor. One of the Karsh at a corner table finally spoke. His voice was deep, steady, and it cut through the whispers. "The girl is right. I have seen the carvings myself, on the walls of the black temples of Karsh Prime. The echo marks are not random. They are a sign of one who cannot be broken." The room went quiet again. Ren shook his head. "I am no warrior. I am no chosen one. I am only a waiter." But Zira's eyes did not leave him. She seemed to see more than he wanted to show. For the first time since entering the tavern, her unsteady posture straightened. Her drunkenness seemed to drain away, replaced by something like respect. She stepped back, lowering her voice. "You may not believe it, but these scars carry meaning. Perhaps to you, they are only memories of pain. To my people, they are proof of destiny." Ren wanted to protest, but the words caught in his throat. He remembered the dark of the collapsed mine, the weight of stone pressing down, the screams of men and women fading one by one. He remembered the moment he thought it was over, and the shock when he woke again to rescuers pulling him free. It was not destiny, he told himself. It was chance, nothing more. Yet the memory left his hands trembling at his sides. The tavern's noise slowly returned, though not as before. It was quieter, the tone changed. People no longer mocked or laughed. They muttered, curious, suspicious, uncertain. Ren heard words like survivor, lucky, unbroken. He hated the attention, but he could not escape it. Zira finally stepped back fully, bowing her head slightly. "Forgive me for tearing your shirt. I did not mean it. But what I saw, it matters." Ren adjusted the torn fabric, nodding stiffly. He wanted to return to his work, to disappear into the background again. But the crowd did not let him. A merchant leaned forward, calling out, "Human, tell us. How many survived that mine collapse?" Ren hesitated. He wished they would not ask, but he answered. "Not many. Less than 20. Out of 100. The room hushed again. Even the loudest drinkers grew still. To them, numbers spoke louder than scars. 1 out of 5 had lived, and this human stood among them. Zero whispered again, though this time her voice carried across the silence. 1 in 5. That is not luck. That is endurance. That is what the echo marks are." Ren wanted to argue, but he knew nothing he said would change what they saw now. The scars that once made him self-conscious had become something else in their eyes. He hated it, because he had never asked for such weight. Yet part of him wondered if perhaps there was truth in their words. The Karsh warrior who had spoken earlier stood from his chair. His tall frame cast a shadow across the room. He walked closer, his heavy boots echoing on the floor. Stopping before Ren, he bowed his head, not deeply, but enough to signal respect. "You may not see it," he said, "but others will. The galaxy watches humans closely, for they are new and untested. If you carry the echo marks, then perhaps your people carry more than we thought." Ren's mouth went dry. He wanted to say he was just one man, just a worker who wanted to live quietly. But the tavern had already decided otherwise. When the Karsh warrior stepped back, others began whispering again. This time it was not mockery. It was speculation. Could it be true that humans carried hidden strength? The question hung in the air like smoke. Zira finally placed her flask on a table and sat down, calmer than before. She did not take her eyes off Ren. For her, the night's foolish stumble had revealed something greater than she had imagined. Ren walked slowly back to the counter, his tray still in hand, his torn shirt barely covering his chest. He felt heavier with every step, as though the stares of the crowd pressed down on his back. He wished for silence, but deep inside, another feeling stirred. It was not pride, not yet. It was the faint, uncertain spark of possibility. The Starlight Tavern returned to its noise in the days that followed, but it was no longer the same kind of noise. The laughter, the music, the shouts of alien traders still filled the air, yet something new lingered in the corners. Conversation stopped when Ren walked by. Curious eyes followed him when he carried trays. He was no longer only a human waiter. He had become the subject of whispers. Ren hated it. He had worked hard to avoid standing out. He wanted only to earn his credits and one day travel far from the crowded station. Now, no matter how quietly he moved, someone always seemed to be watching. Some looked at him with amusement, as if he were part of a story they could not believe. Others stared with respect that made him uncomfortable. A few Karsh even nodded slightly when they passed him, a small gesture that confused him even more. Zira had not left the station. After that night, she returned to the tavern often, though this time she drank less. She always chose a seat where she could watch Ren. Sometimes she asked questions about his scars, about his life, about the mind collapse. Ren gave simple answers, nothing more. But she never seemed satisfied. One evening, as Ren was cleaning tables, she approached him directly. Her posture was steady, her silver skin glowing faintly under the tavern lights. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of decision. "You should not stay here," she told him. Ren looked up in surprise. "Why not? This is my work." Zira shook her head. "Work is not your fate. The marks on your body mean more than serving drinks. You carry something that my people believe important. If you remain here, you will waste it." Ren frowned, uneasy. "I am only a man who lived through bad luck. That is all." "Perhaps you believe that," Zira replied, "but the galaxy does not. Already stories of you spread through the station. Soon they will travel farther. Traders speak, miners gossip, captains listen. Humans are still young among the stars. They search for proof of your strength. You may not want to be an example, but you have become one." Her words unsettled him. He wanted to deny them, but he remembered the stares, the whispers, the nods of respect. He could not pretend it was only his imagination. Ren tried to return to his work, but her words followed him through the night. When he lay in his small bunk later, he could not sleep. He thought of the mind collapse, of the darkness and the weight of stone. He thought of his rescue, and the scars that had never left him. He thought of the Karsh warrior who bowed slightly to him, something no Karsh would normally do for a human. The next day, When Zira entered the tavern again, Ren met her gaze before she even spoke. Something had already changed inside him. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly. Zira studied him for a moment before answering. "I want you to come with me. I travel with a small crew. We explore old routes, forgotten stations, and lost records. We search for truths hidden in the galaxy. With you, doors may open that would remain closed to others." Ren blinked. "Why me?" "Because of the marks," she said. "Because of survival. Because my people once believed the echo marks belonged to those chosen to face what others cannot. You may not believe it yet, but I do." Ren laughed softly, though there was no humor in the sound. "I am a waiter. I have no training, no weapons, no ship. I do not even know how to live outside a station anymore." Zero leaned closer. "You have what matters. Endurance. The rest can be learned." Her words struck something deep in him. Ren had always told himself he survived the mine collapse by chance. Yet when he thought about it now, he remembered how he had crawled through narrow gaps, how he had fought for air, how he had refused to give up even when his body begged him to. Perhaps it was not only luck. Perhaps it was stubbornness, persistence, a will he did not know he had. Still, the idea of leaving scared him. The station was noisy, crowded, and sometimes cruel, but it was safe. Out there, among forgotten ruins and lost routes, danger waited. Ren did not answer her that night. But the thought stayed with him. Days passed, and each day the stairs in the tavern grew heavier. He realized he no longer felt comfortable serving mugs and cleaning tables. He began to feel trapped, as if the walls of the tavern pressed closer each time someone whispered his name. Finally, one quiet morning before the tavern opened, Ren stood alone at the counter. He looked at the empty room, at the chairs stacked neatly, at the floor he had swept 1,000 times. His chest felt heavy. This was no longer his place. That evening, when Zira returned, Ren was waiting. He had packed a small bag with what little he owned. His torn shirt had been replaced by a plain new one, though the scars beneath remained. "I will come," he said simply. Zira's eyes lit with approval. She nodded once. "Good. Then your journey begins now." They left the tavern together. The crowd watched, murmuring as Ren walked out with her. For some, it was the end of a small story. For others, it was the beginning of a larger one. The docking ring of Orion Station buzzed with life. Ships of every shape and size waited in their bays. Zero led Ren toward a vessel smaller than most, its hull marked by scratches and burns from past voyages. It was no grand warship, only a humble exploration craft. Yet when Ren looked at it, his heart beat faster. The door opened with a hiss, and Zero motioned for him to step inside. "Welcome to the Seeker's Flame," she said. "From now on, this is your home." Ren hesitated at the threshold. Behind him lay the life he had known, safe but limited. Before him stretched uncertainty, danger, and possibility. He drew a slow breath, then stepped forward. The door closed behind him with a final hiss. The journey had begun. The Seeker's Flame drifted away from Orion Station, its engines humming like a low song. Ren sat by a small window, watching the lights of the station grow smaller until they were just another star among many. His heart felt heavy with both fear and excitement. He had left the only life he knew, and now he was traveling into the unknown. The ship was not large. Its narrow halls echoed with every step, and its rooms were simple, built for function rather than comfort. Zira introduced him to the crew one by one. There was Karan, a broad-shouldered mechanic with 4 arms, always smelling faintly of oil. He grinned when he saw Ren. "So this is the human with the strange marks. Let us see if you work as hard as they say." Next was Myra, a quiet pilot with pale green skin and calm eyes that seemed to measure everything. She offered Ren only a small nod, but her steady gaze felt like approval. The last was Vey, a researcher who carried a small device in one hand at all times, tapping notes and scanning anything that caught his interest. His voice was quick, his questions faster. "You survived a mine collapse. Did you lose consciousness? How long were you buried? What is your memory of oxygen loss?" Ren had no answer for most of them, and eventually Zira told Vey to give the human space. Though the crew was small, Ren could sense they were close, like family. They teased each other, argued sometimes, but trusted one another deeply. Ren felt out of place at first, unsure of his role. But Zira assured him that his presence mattered. The Seeker's flame traveled beyond the usual trade routes. They followed the faint signal Zira had been studying, a pattern of pulses buried in old transmissions. They believed it came from an ancient source, perhaps linked to forgotten civilizations. The thought made Ren uneasy, but he kept his silence. Days passed in the rhythm of space travel. Ren learned to help Karan in the engine bay, carrying tools and wiping grease from panels. He watched Myra guide the ship through asteroid fields, her hands steady on the controls. He even sat with Vey once, though the researcher's rapid questions left him dizzy. Bit by bit, he began to feel less like an outsider. At last, after a long journey, they arrived at a system with a broken world. The planet floated in silence, its surface scarred by vast cracks and jagged scars. Once, it must have been green, with seas and forests, but now it lay dry and lifeless. Fragments of its moon hung shattered in orbit, glowing faintly in the starlight. Ren pressed his face to the window, his breath catching. "What happened here?" Zira stood beside him, her copper hair glowing in the dim cabin light. "War," she said softly. "Long before your people reached the stars, this world was home to one of the great civilizations. But they fought, and they destroyed themselves." The ship descended slowly toward the surface. Dust storms swirled across broken plains. Blackened ruins rose from the earth like the bones of giants. Ren had seen abandoned mining towns before, but nothing like this. This was not abandonment. This was devastation. They landed near a wide valley where shattered towers leaned against one another. The air outside was thin but breathable, though it carried the bitter taste of ash even after countless years. The crew stepped out together, their boots sinking slightly into the dry soil. Ren followed, his eyes wide. The ruins stretched as far as he could see. Crumbled walls bore strange carvings, symbols that glowed faintly under the pale sun. They rushed to scan them, muttering excitedly. Myra walked with caution, her eyes sharp for danger. Karan whistled low, shaking his head at the scale of destruction. Zira stood tall, silent, as if listening. Ren moved closer to her. "Why did we come here?" She turned her gaze to the largest ruin in the valley, a massive structure half buried in stone. "Because the signal we followed comes from there. Something still lives beneath this world, even after its people are gone." Her words sent a chill through Ren. How could anything survive here? After so long he looked again at the broken city, its towers leaning like tired giants. The silence was heavy, as if the land itself remembered sorrow. They walked toward the great ruin. The structure was shaped like a vast dome, cracked and broken in places, yet still standing. Its surface was covered with patterns that shimmered faintly, as if refusing to die. When they reached the base, they found an entrance, half blocked by fallen stone. Karan used his great arms to shift the debris aside, clearing a narrow passage. Zero led the way inside, her footsteps echoing. Ren followed close, his chest tight with unease. The air grew cooler, carrying a faint hum that he could feel more than hear. Inside, the walls were covered with carvings that glowed softly. They showed figures of tall beings, their forms graceful and proud. They also showed war, with fire and destruction raining down. Ren could not look at the scenes for long without feeling the weight of their tragedy. They reached a vast chamber deep within the structure. At its center stood a machine, tall as 3 men, covered in dust but still pulsing with faint light. Wires and crystal panels stretched from its sides, glowing like veins. They gasped. It still functions. After all this time, it still lives. Ren stared at it, uneasy. The hum in the air grew stronger, vibrating in his bones. The machine seemed to watch them, though it had no eyes. Zira stepped forward. Her voice was calm but reverent. "This is what we came for. This is the source of the signal." Ren felt his heart pound. He remembered the tavern, the whispers, the scars on his chest. He had left behind his quiet life to follow her into this. Now, standing before a machine older than human history, he wondered if he had stepped into something far greater than himself. The machine pulsed once, a light flickering across its surface. The hum deepened, and a voice, broken and distorted, filled the chamber. Ren froze. It was not a voice like any he had heard. It was ancient, weary, yet filled with power. "Survivors," it said. "You have come at last." The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Ren felt his skin crawl. The shattered world was not silent after all. Something still waited here, something that remembered the past and had chosen to speak. And though Ren wished to deny it, he could not escape the feeling that the words were meant for him. The chamber shook with the echo of the machine's words. Dust drifted down from the cracked ceiling, and the glowing carvings on the walls flickered as though stirred by the ancient voice. The crew of the Seeker's Flame stood in silence, each one staring at the massive construct. Ren's chest tightened. He had never heard anything like this voice. It was neither alive nor dead, neither male nor female. It carried a weight of countless years, as if every syllable carried memories of ages long gone. Vey stepped forward first, his device buzzing as it tried to record everything. "It speaks," he whispered. "After all this time, it still speaks." His eyes shone with excitement. The machine pulsed again, and the hum filled the air. The distorted voice repeated, louder this time. "Survivors. You have come at last." Zero moved closer, her copper hair catching the glow of the carvings. Her posture was firm, her hand resting on the hilt of her blade though she did not draw it. "We are not your people," she said clearly. "We are travelers." "Who are you?" The chamber fell silent for a long moment. Then the machine's light brightened, spreading across its panels. When it spoke again, the words came with less distortion, as though it had adjusted to their presence. "I am a guardian," it said. "I was left behind when my makers fell. This world was theirs. They built great cities, they shaped the stars, but in the end, they destroyed themselves. I remained, to wait, to warn, to remember." Ren swallowed hard. The ruins outside had already spoken of war and loss, but to hear it confirmed by a voice from the past made it heavier. He glanced at the others. Karan's forearms were folded tightly, his usual grin gone. Myra's calm eyes narrowed as she studied the machine. Even Zira's face, usually strong, showed a shadow of sorrow. Vey raised his device again. If you were waiting, then for whom were you calling survivors of your own kind? The machine pulsed once more. At first, I called for them. I searched the stars for their voices. None answered. Ages passed. My signal became weaker, fading into the noise of space. Yet I continued. For though my people were gone, the enemy remained. Ren's breath caught. Enemy. The machine's lights flickered, and images appeared in the air, shapes of towering ships, shadows of creatures that looked both alive and machine. They burned across the stars, leaving destruction in their wake. The images were blurred, like memories breaking apart, but their meaning was clear. The enemy came from beyond the void, the voice said. They sought not land, nor wealth, but silence. They wished to silence every voice, to end every song, to make all worlds still. My makers fought them with all their strength. They endured, but they could not last forever. The enemy waits still, hidden, patient. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Zira's hand tightened on her blade. Karan muttered under his breath, while Myra's face remained unreadable. Vey's voice trembled with both fear and fascination. And now you speak to us. Why? The machine shifted, its panels glowing brighter. Its next words came slower, as though chosen with care. Because you are different. You do not fall as easily as others. I feel it in you. You carry the marks of endurance. Ren stiffened. The scars on his chest seemed to burn, though they were hidden beneath his shirt. His heart raced. Zira turned sharply toward him. Her silver eyes widened. It speaks of you. Ren shook his head. No. It cannot mean me. I am only a man who survived by chance. But the machine's voice grew stronger. Chance is the word of those who do not understand. Survival is not chance. It is will. It is defiance. You carry it, as my people once carried it. You are a sign that not all voices will fall silent. The chamber fell into silence again, broken only by the low hum of the machine. Ren felt every eye turn toward him. His hands trembled, and he took a step back. I did nothing special. I only lived. Anyone would fight to live. Zira's voice was quiet, but firm. No, Ren. Not anyone. Many fall. Few rise again. That is why the marks matter. Ren wanted to protest, but the words caught in his throat. Memories of the mind collapse returned to him: darkness, pain, fear, and the moment he refused to close his eyes even as hope faded. Perhaps it was not chance. Perhaps it was something deeper, something he had never understood. The machine pulsed again, showing more images. It displayed maps of stars, some marked with symbols of ruin, others still burning bright. It showed pathways across the galaxy, routes long forgotten by living species. I have knowledge, it said. Weapons left behind. Maps to hidden paths, warnings of the enemy's movements. But I cannot use them. I can only give them. I waited for those who could endure. And now you stand here. Vey's hands shook as he tried to record everything. This is beyond measure. This is history itself. If the human governments learn of this, Myra cut him off with a sharp look. Careful. Knowledge this powerful can destroy as well as save. Zira stepped closer to the machine. Her voice was steady. Why us? Why now? Because the galaxy grows quiet, the machine said. Species grow comfortable. They forget how to endure. But you small, fragile, knew you refused to be broken. That is why I called. That is why you came. Ren felt the weight of the words pressing on him like stone. He had left his home to escape whispers and stares, yet now he stood in the heart of a ruin, marked by something far greater than he wished. He had no training, no power, no command. Yet this ancient voice spoke to him as if he were chosen. He looked at Zira, who watched him with fierce eyes. He looked at the crew, each one waiting, uncertain. Finally, he looked back at the machine. "I am no warrior," he said quietly. "I do not know if I can be what you want." The machine's hum deepened, almost like a heartbeat. "You do not need to know. You only need to endure. The rest will follow." The chamber fell silent again. The ancient machine glowed faintly, as though waiting. Ren stood frozen, his scars burning beneath his shirt, his future suddenly vast and uncertain. The chamber stayed silent after the machine's words. The air felt heavy, filled with the echo of the ancient voice. Ren stood still, his chest rising and falling too fast, his scars burning beneath the fabric of his shirt. He had never wanted attention, never wanted to be special, yet here he was, standing before a machine older than human history, being told he carried meaning. The crew shifted uneasily. Myra studied the glowing walls with sharp eyes, her expression unreadable. Karan crossed his forearms tightly, his broad chest rising and falling with slow breaths. Vay's hands shook as he clutched his recorder, unable to stop muttering notes under his breath. And Zira stood close to Ren, her silver eyes fixed on him with a strange intensity. Finally, Zira broke the silence. "You said you waited," she said to the machine. "You said you searched for survivors of your kind. But why speak to us, to him, to a human waiter? Why place this weight upon him?" The machine pulsed, its panels glowing brighter. "Because the truth is hidden, even from you. My people are gone, yes, but not by war alone. The enemy struck us, but it was not the first blow. We weakened ourselves with pride. We believed we could not fall. We believed endurance was eternal. We were wrong." The voice paused, as though gathering strength. When it continued, it was slower, each word carrying sorrow. "We built machines, weapons, fleets that could destroy stars. We thought such power was enough. But endurance is not power. Endurance is the will to rise again when all else fails. We forgot this truth. And so, we fell." Ren's breath caught. The machine's words sank into him like stones into water. He remembered his own survival, the endless hours in the collapsed mine. He had not survived through strength or weapons. He had survived because he refused to give up, even when every part of him wanted to. Zira's voice was firm. "You speak of endurance. You see it in him. But how can one man matter against enemies that destroyed entire civilizations?" The machine pulsed softly, almost like a sigh. "One man alone cannot. But one man can remind others of what they have forgotten. Your galaxy has grown quiet, too quiet. Species build, trade, and boast of their achievements, but they do not test their spirit. They do not know what will come when silence falls again. Yet this human carries scars that prove he has endured. His story can awaken others." The words pressed down on Ren like a weight. He shook his head. "I did not ask for this. I am not a leader. I am not even strong. I only lived when others did not." "Exactly," the machine said. "That is what matters. To live when others do not. To endure. That is the hidden truth of survival. Power fades, knowledge fades, but will endures. You are proof. The chamber glowed brighter, showing more images in the air. They were not of war this time, but of survival. Figures climbing from rubble. Ships escaping destruction. Children standing among ruins. The images showed not victory, but persistence, the refusal to end. Ren felt his throat tighten. These images mirrored his own memories. Trapped in the mine, gasping for air, clawing at the stone, refusing to let go. He had not thought of it as noble. He had thought of it as desperation. But here, the machine showed him it was something greater. Zira stepped closer to him. Her voice was quiet, yet carried strength. Do you see now, Ren? This is why your scars matter. They are not just reminders of pain. They are a message, one written on your skin. My people told stories of the echo marks, signs of those who rise again. I never believed them until I saw you. Now I understand. The machine sees the same truth. Ren lowered his eyes. He felt the weight of her gaze, the weight of the machine's words, the weight of his past pressing on him. He had run from attention, run from whispers, but perhaps he had been running from himself as well. Karan finally spoke, his deep voice steady. If this enemy is still out there, hidden and waiting, then what will happen to us? What can we do with only one ship and a handful of people? The machine pulsed again, and star maps filled the chamber. Bright lines traced hidden routes through space, leading to distant systems. Some were marked with symbols of fire, others with glowing circles. I offer what I have, the machine said. Knowledge of hidden paths, records of the enemy's movements. Weapons left behind, if you have the will to claim them. But more than these, I offer a story. A story that must spread. For only those who endure will survive what comes. Vei's voice cracked with excitement. Weapons, maps, history, this could change everything. Myra cut him off, her voice calm but sharp. Or destroy everything. If the wrong hands use this knowledge, it could bring war before the enemy even returns. The machine flickered, its voice softer now. That is the choice. To hide, or to rise. To stay silent, or to speak. My makers chose silence in their pride, and they fell. You must choose differently. All eyes turned to Ren again. He felt his stomach twist. Why him? Why not Zira, who was strong and proud? Why not Myra, who was calm and wise? Why not Karan or Vei? Yet the machine's gaze, though it had no eyes, felt locked on him alone. He spoke slowly, his voice trembling. I am not sure I can carry such a choice. I never wanted this. I never wanted to be anything more than myself. Zira placed a hand on his shoulder. Her grip was firm, grounding him. You do not carry it alone. You have us. But it must begin with you, because you are the one the galaxy will see. A human marked by survival. A reminder of what matters. Ren looked around the chamber, at the glowing carvings, at the faces of his crew, at the ancient machine still waiting. His heart pounded, but for the first time, he did not feel only fear. He felt a spark, small but real. The machine's voice came one last time, soft and final. Endure, and others will follow. This is the hidden truth. Do not forget it. The lights dimmed, and the hum faded to silence. The machine grew still, its glow fading until it was nothing more than a shadow among ruins. Ren stood frozen, his hand pressed against his chest. His scars no longer felt like wounds. They felt like symbols, heavy and unasked for, yet undeniable. The hidden truth had been revealed, and now it was his to carry. The chamber was silent now. The ancient machine no longer glowed, no longer spoke. Its voice had faded into the still air, leaving only the weight of its final words. The crew of the Seeker's Flame stood among the ruins, each one caught in their own thoughts. Ren stood at the center, his hands still resting on his chest. The scars beneath his shirt felt different now. They were no longer just marks of pain but signs of survival, signs that carried meaning far beyond him. Yet he still struggled to believe it. Zira stepped closer, her silver eyes steady on him. It has given you a choice, Ren. Not only you, but humanity itself. What will you do with it? Ren looked at her, then at the others. Myra's calm face held quiet strength. Karan shifted uneasily, his forearms folded as if holding himself together. Vay's recorder was silent for once, his wide eyes waiting. Ren drew a slow breath. If I send this knowledge back to Earth, it could change everything. People will see us differently. Some will fear us. Some will want to use it for power. Some will laugh at it. But if I keep it hidden, then the warning dies here. And when the enemy returns, no one will be ready. The crew listened, letting him speak. His voice was not strong, but it carried honesty. I am not a soldier, he said. I am not a leader. But I survived. And maybe that is enough. Maybe what the machine said is true. If humans know the truth, they will endure. We always do. So I cannot keep the secret. I must send it home. Zira's lips curved into a small, approving smile. Then the choice is made. Myra nodded slowly. It is the harder path. But perhaps the only path that can prepare us. Karan grumbled, rubbing one of his chins. Once this reaches the wrong ears, we may all be hunted. But I would rather face danger awake than wait for silence in sleep. Vay lifted his recorder again, his voice shaking with awe. This is history. We are part of it. Ren, you are part of it. Ren shook his head softly. Not just me. All of us. Humanity. Every one of us who refuses to give up. The crew left the chamber and returned to the Seeker's Flame. The ship's engines hummed to life, shaking dust from its worn hull. As they lifted off, Ren looked down at the ruined city below. The towers of stone and metal, once full of life, now lay in silence. Yet within that silence, a spark had been passed on to them. When the ship cleared the atmosphere, Myra moved to the console. I can set the transmitter, she said. But once we send this, we cannot take it back. Ren stood behind her. His hands trembled, but he did not turn away. Do it. Send everything. The maps, the warnings, the story of the machine. All of it. The console glowed as Myra worked. Data streams filled the air, lines of light rushing into the transmitter. The star maps shimmered, the warnings burned bright, and the story of survival, of scars, of endurance, all poured into the signal. Transmission ready, Myra said. Ren hesitated only a moment, then pressed the final key. The ship trembled as the message shot into the void, racing faster than light toward human space. It is done, Myra whispered. The crew stood together in silence. Outside the window, stars stretched endlessly, each one a reminder of how small they were, and yet how much they carried now. Zira turned to Ren. Do you feel it, the weight of what you have done? Ren nodded slowly. Yes. But it is not only my weight. It belongs to all of us. To humanity. We will carry it together. Karan chuckled, though his voice was low. I never thought a human waiter would be the one to shake the galaxy. Perhaps there is more to your kind than most believe. Ren smiled faintly. Perhaps there is more to all of us than we believe. Time passed as the Seeker's flame drifted among the stars. Each crew member sat with their own thoughts. They replayed fragments of the machine's voice again and again. Myra studied the maps with quiet focus. Karan checked the ship's weapons, muttering about being ready for anything. And Zira remained near Ren, her presence steady, as though she had chosen to stand beside him no matter where this path led. Ren sat in his small cabin, staring at the stars. He thought of Earth, of the people who would receive the message. Some would doubt. Some would argue. Some would see danger. But others would see hope. Others would remember what it meant to endure. He touched the scars on his chest. They had once been symbols of shame, reminders of fear and loss. Now they were something else. They were proof that even when everything falls, one can rise again. The machine had called him a sign, but Ren did not believe he was alone. Every human carried scars, seen or unseen. Every human had endured something. Together, those scars formed the story of a people who refused to fall silent. One day, perhaps soon, the enemy would return. And when they did, humanity would not be quiet. They would not vanish as the machine's makers had. They would rise, scarred but unbroken. Ren closed his eyes, letting the hum of the ship comfort him. For the first time in years, he did not feel small. He felt like part of something vast, something alive. When he opened his eyes, Zero was at the doorway. "Rest if you can," she said softly. "The path ahead will not be easy." Ren gave her a tired but genuine smile. "It never is. But we will endure." She nodded once, firmly. Then she left him to the stars. The ship carried on, small against the endless dark, but carrying within it a message that could change the fate of worlds. A human's scars had become a symbol, and now the galaxy would learn what humanity truly was. Not fragile. Not weak. Not silent. But enduring. Always enduring.